I'm talking about tonight, dispelling doubt. Dispelling doubt. Have you ever had an uninvited guest? How many of you ever had somebody that wasn't invited and they came anyway? Yeah. And we have. And how many of you was thrilled when they showed up? I guess it could be good if it was Ed McMahon or something, you know. Publishers Clearinghouse. He's probably passed away by now. But I guess it could be good. But many times we'll go visiting and we knock on somebody's door and I know they're there. They just don't want us to be there. They're there. They don't want us there at that time, unannounced. And in our day, in our culture, especially with younger couples, it's not apropos to just show up at somebody's house. But I think it has its place. We're not going to talk about that. But we still have a command to witness to people. Amen. No matter what the culture says. Amen. And but just unannounced. Many times we don't foresee doubt. We think we're the most stable, and I'm not talking about doubt of salvation tonight. We think we're the most stable people on planet Earth, and if anybody is not going to be shaken, it's going to be me, you're thinking. And then all of a sudden, this cosmic clash comes out of nowhere. And then everything you knew to be true and right and firm is now not looking so firm. It's almost as if you're questioning things that you have always believed. You can only survive on somebody else's answers for so long. Remember that. You can only survive on somebody else's answers to your questions for so long. You can for a brief moment, but at some point, it's going to have to be you figuring it out with the Lord's help. You can't just memorize somebody else's answers for questions you're faced with. At some point, you're going to miss A to B, and you're going to go back and nobody's going to be there because they just told you this is the answer. I'll never forget. At the time, I thought she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was my 9th grade geometry teacher. And man, I thought, this lady is it. She's God's gift to me because I'm making an A+ 100 all the way across in geometry. And I don't know if I know how to do this or not. So what she did was she just gave you the test the day before. But Terry, that's terrible. It's terrible now, but it wasn't terrible when I was there. I thought, man, one of the greatest gifts God gave me was memorization. So I thought, hey, we're going to pass this, buddy. You give me the stuff, and it's going to be done tomorrow. And I 100 all the way through, and didn't know any more when I got done when I started. That's not a good place to be. Now, I soon had to go back and catch all that, right? You don't just go forward in the pre-calculus and calculus and skip something. You don't skip. But I thought she was doing me a big favor till I got into, college math, and I found out she was a scoundrel. She wasn't a hero. Because she caused me a lot of pain and grief. Because she fed me the answers, but they were no good when she wasn't there to answer a new question. Boy, you better be careful of this, and I believe in teaching and training, but just shoveling somebody the answers does not help when the fire comes. When the storms come, handing somebody the answers does not help because there's going to be a question that they didn't cover. Or somebody's going to want to know why. Somebody's going to want some reasoning. And so be careful. Now, for a while, if Ashlyn goes to her father and her father says, Mark says to Ashlyn, You tell them because your daddy said so. That works for me. Right? Daddy said so. And your kids, why? Because my daddy said so. Hey, we're good with that. No problems. But one day, Ashland, our young people, they could say that, but one day it's not going to sound as good as it did when she was 10. Being 18 and saying my daddy said so, now in the realm of dating, that works no matter how old you are. Amen, Brother Mark. That works. If you're 30 and daddy said so, you're good. Why can't you go out with me? Because my daddy said I could. Hallelujah. It's good. It works. 30 years. There's no age limit, no expiration date on daddy said so in dating. Now, other stuff, why you can't go over to so-and-so's house or go with them where they're going tonight? Eventually, you're going to have to come up with your own answers. Amen? Our children eventually going to have to come up with their own answers. And same when things are just rocked at your house. I mean, 1 minute it's great, and next thing it's like 9/11, the plane comes in the side of your house, and everything is gone. You can't run to the handbook and say, what do we do now? When doubt comes in. And Thomas here, he'd just been at the cross. Now look in chapter 20, verse 19. The same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst and said unto them, Peace be unto you. And when he had so said, he showed unto them his hands and his side. Then were the disciples glad when they saw the Lord. Then said Jesus to them again, Peace be unto you, as my Father hath sent me, even so send I you. Now look at verse 24. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. So he wasn't there. So surely at the cross, the blood is splattering at his feet. He sees the nails and spikes engulf the hands of Jesus. He sees the spear lodged in the side of Jesus and the blood and water coming out. He hears the cries of the mob. He sees the blood. He sees the thorns embedded in the head of Jesus. And so he doesn't have the answers because what he thought was going to happen is not happening. He thought Jesus was going to come in and, rule with a rod of iron and fix it all. And that's not what happened. And so he's reeling. So much so, he just went and hid. He wasn't even there when they saw Jesus. He wasn't there. Now, thankfully, they went and got him. But he wasn't there. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. But you know, when someone dies in a tragic set of circumstances, when somebody dies in a tragic way, and you have been around this, you've seen this. When somebody loses their job, when reality hits and the storm blows through and threatens your tranquil existence. Everything was fine and so peaceful, and now this storm blows through and threatens everything you knew. This emotional explosion takes residence at your house. And you know what starts flying in when the emotional disturbance takes over your home? Doubt. Doubt. Like everything you thought was sure is now called into question. Everything you thought was just clear cut. Isn't it funny? Everybody knows the answers to the problems. Everybody knows how to raise kids that don't have kids. Isn't that funny? Everybody knows how to pastor a church that's never pastored a church. Everybody knows how to be, the boys know how to be a husband and they've never been married. And it's everything's relative. I mean, you can be just as front. Yeah, I don't know why they're doubting that. I've never doubted, 18-year-old telling somebody 45 in the middle of a storm. I don't know why they're doing that. Well, just hold on a minute. Wait till it hits your house. Be very careful what you say to other people when they're in the middle of a storm. It's such a delicate time. Be careful what you say about what you would do. I never forget, and I've told this story, and I'm not going to repeat the story, but I'm going to tell you this part of it. The night that we got carjacked and my windows got blown out, 12-gauge shotgun stared me in the face in Chattanooga. I was a Bible college student. When we got to campus, my legs shaking, and I had some red Hawaiian punch in my lap, and now that Hawaiian punch from just the shakes was now all over me. I get back to the dorm, and nobody said, "Man, are you okay? Come here, let's go pray. Let's go sit down for a minute and get our thoughts together." You know what everybody's response was? Without fail. I'll tell you right now what I would have done. I'd have floored that thing. I said, I got a clutch, okay? There was 2 cars on me. When I popped the clutch, the car went dead. Genius. Well, I'd have shot him. Yeah, it's illegal to have guns on campus, okay? So, won't say anything about that, but. And so everybody's got the right answer. Well, I know something. I know y'all had to provoke them in some way. That was not furthest from the truth. Everybody's got the answers when it's not them. Right. Amen. Everybody's got, they know exactly how to do it. That's not what people need. Mothers, how many of you are mothers in here? Your mother. You know this is true. You know this is true. Whether you'll never raise your hand, you may smile a little bit at me. Don't you just love it when every other mother tells you about all their experiences 20 years ago? Everybody's got their experiences, and they all want to share them. Can I say something to you? People in pain don't like to hear your stories.
That's right.
As kindly as I can say it, people in pain really don't want to hear your stories. They want to hear what you did. I'm being kind. They don't. When I was a boy, I never forget, Mom, I was over. Is my mama here? She's out of church tonight. Nursery. Sick. I need to check on my mama. I was in the neighborhood across the way. I always went looking for somebody to play with. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, so I wore out everybody's basketball goal in the neighborhood. They didn't even have kids anymore, and I wore their basketball goal out, and there wasn't even nobody playing at their house but me. And so I was riding a skateboard at somebody's house. I fell down. 3 layers of epidermis laying back on my arm here. And Mama wants to come and blow on it. So, you know what comes out when you blow on stuff. Spit. And then blow on it. And wants to talk to me about it and tell me everything ask me 100 questions about what happened. I was taught to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, but I'm going to tell you, that's pushing the envelope right there. When you're writhing in pain and somebody wants to know all about it. Right? Same goes for emotional pain, death, loss of job. Bad stuff happening. Nobody really wants a lot of explanation. And they want to hear about how you did it. They need somebody just to love them, pray for them, to comfort them, and let them know that they're there. That's really the ministry of being with somebody. But here it happens. All this stuff happens. Reality hits, storms in, explosions here. You discover things that you didn't know about. You uncover things you didn't know. There's this vortex of dilemmas. There's dilemmas everywhere that you can't solve. They're going every which way. And as before, you've always been able to, Brother Robert, you've always been able to gather things together and fix them. Like catch it. Sometimes it's so many at one time, you can't catch them all. And you're trying to fix this, and soon you're overtaken. And you can't solve them all. And what's beautiful in chapter 14 and on down in chapter 20, Jesus doesn't rebuke Thomas. Really? He doesn't rebuke him. He does not say, hey, turn back to page 50 of your handbook, Thomas, and you'll know. Mount of Olives, page 50, turn. He doesn't do that. He doesn't rebuke him in front and tell him that. He said, in effect, look at it again in John 14. And Thomas said, Lord, we know not whither thou goest, verse 5. And how can we know the way? And Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. How could he call himself the truth when everything appeared to be a lie? Thomas is standing at the foot of the cross. Everything he had known seemed to be a lie. How could Jesus be the truth when everything seemed to be the lie? Have you ever been there? When everything you knew is suddenly questioned? How could he have been life when he'd just been told about the impending death of Jesus? How could he be that? More unresolved questions are lingering in Thomas's fragile, fractured soul. Doubts, questions. And as I said earlier, any question to God without guile is not a skeptical question, it's an honest search. Any question asked to God without guile is not a skeptical question, it's an honest search. You know, you hear people, you better not question God. Well, don't question His authority. Searching for answers. That's wrong. It's wrong. And if there's no bitterness, no guile in your heart spewed out toward God, it's not wrong. It's not wrong to reflect and see. What becomes wrong is when you blame Him and you question His authority in your life. When you encounter a sudden, unexpected calamity, when you pray for, how many of you pray for a specific outcome? And honestly, I'm going to raise my hand, okay? So don't be ashamed. You prayed for a specific outcome and the exact opposite happened. You raise your hand? Yeah. When you lose a coworker, you lose a dear friend moves to another state. When you live right and suffer for it, you think, man, I'm trying to do right and all this is happening. When life takes you through unexpected twists and turns, we often get overwhelmed. But there'll come a day in your life when those lingering questions will turn into stabilized faith if you'll let them. So here we come down to John 20 again. And so Jesus is there. Thomas is not there. Now look at verse 26. And after 8 days again his disciples were within and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst and said, Peace be unto you. Then saith he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless but believing. And Thomas answered and said to him, My Lord and my God. And Jesus Jesus said to him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they who have not seen and yet have believed. Blessed are they, John, Jordan, Dwight, Dale. Blessed are you when you believe, when you trust God. As Thomas, he had to come to the foot of the cross like we all have to do and leave the details up to Jesus Christ and leave the details at the foot of the cross and say, I trust you with the details of my life. Amen. Even though I don't understand everything and everything's swirling in my head like a cyclone, but I trust you. And he said, blessed are ye, John, Dale, Jordan, Dwight, when you believe without seeing. When you believe God, when you can't, and you know, we can't always see around the corner. Blessed are ye. When the storm comes in, everything you thought was going to happen doesn't happen. How many of you had dreams that just absolutely, you thought your life was going to be this way and it didn't turn out that way? When that happens, what do? It's okay to reflect. It's okay to wonder. At the end of the day, come to the cross and say, God, you want to dispel doubt? It's about, he says, I'm the way, Thomas. It's not about a physical way. Did you know that? We want the circumstances right. Thomas wanted the circumstances right. He wanted the Roman Empire gone. It's not about the circumstances being right. It's about our submission to His authority in our life. Dispelling doubt is about our submission to His authority. God, you have the role, the controls. You have the reins. You're in control of my life. If I get married at age 27, fine. If I get married at age 40, fine. If I don't get married, fine. If we live here for the rest of our life, fine. If we don't live here for the rest of our life, fine. If we have one car for as many times, fine. If we have two, fine. If we have this, fine. If we don't have this, fine. Whatever you decide, it's okay. Amen. Because you do see where I don't. That's it. You do see where I don't. Do y'all remember? Y'all remember. You always remember somebody else's calamity, don't you? Y'all remember when I lost this right here? This ring? And I searched for it and told you about it at Cracker Barrel? Yeah, floorboard. Thank you. You got behind in that crack, that land of no return. I bought two tools at Advance Auto. One was a magnet, and one was a mirror, a telescopic mirror. What's the purpose of a telescopic mirror? Well, it's obviously not to see on the top side of the engine. You put it down in the cracks, and it sees the parts that you can't see. It mirrors the parts you can't see. God sees all of that. We see just part of it. He sees all of it. I'm going to give you things to keep in mind when doubt comes. I'll be done. It's at the cross where we find hope for our doubt. It is. Number one, lessons learned in the midst of doubt. Limited sight has risks. Limited sight has risks. What do you call faith? It's when you can't see the next step, but you step anyway. Limited sight has risk. You know why a lot of people don't faith God, trust God? Because they can't see the next step. They can't see the rock, so they don't step. The rock was there all the time. They don't step. Limited sight has risks. Sometimes you need to take those risks. You need to trust God even though you cannot see around. You cannot see around every bend and corner. You can't anticipate every danger. So the idea we have is, since I can't anticipate every problem that's going to happen, I can't anticipate every danger, then I'm just going to sit back on my blessed assurance and not do anything. That way, I'll see everything that comes to me. That's not the way it happens. A life of faith is okay because they understand limited sight has risk. When you walk out and you can't see, when you go out and you can't see. It's like all the older folks who were sitting around in Florida and talking about all the things that they couldn't see. You know, their blood, one had high blood pressure, made her dizzy. One couldn't see for cataracts. They got done talking about all their ailments. And one lady said, oh, law, said we all ought to be thankful we still have our driver's license. You can't see around every bend. Limited sight has risk. But you know it's fun? It's fun trusting God. How are you going to provide this, God? He will. How are you going to do this? He will. Limited sight has risk, but all the rewards when we trust God. When problems come, just trust Him. Number 2, talking about doubt. What do you do when doubt comes? Loosen your grip on the temporal. Loosen your grip on the temporal or temporary. The husband and wife loses their child. And at that moment, they cry out and question really everything they've ever believed. Does that mean they're not saved? No. Does that mean they're not mature? No. But gradually through that process and that storm, God brings them back around, and they refuse to seek security in temporal. You know what happens? We need to loosen our grip on things in this life. You know why we doubt and we don't trust God? Because we have such a tight grip on things. And even each other. You know, God gave you, your family, to enjoy and nurture and take care of, but not to place before Him. And so, what is God saying in doubt? Loosen your grip on the temporary. Loosen your grip on the temporary. Allow God to direct your life. And when something foundational moves, it's okay because you didn't have a tight anchor anyway. When something changes, how many of you know people that like are OCD with routine? Would you raise your hand if you know somebody like that? If you move a pencil on their desk, like they fly into a rage, and they know it. You know people of faith, they have a loose grip on temporary because they understand it is temporary. They have a large view of God and what He's doing in their life. And the reason we get so mad and upset and we blame God and we get bitter, if you hadn't have done that, God, if you hadn't have took this from me, if you hadn't have took them from me, if you hadn't have done this, if you hadn't done this, Lord, we wouldn't have been in this situation. Those people have a tight grip on the temporary. Loosen up on the temporary, the temporal, the things that are going to pass away. Loosen up and anchor in Him. It's a person. It's faith, not just mystical faith, not isolated faith, faith in Jesus Christ, the anchor of our soul, according to Hebrews. He's the foundation of all we are and have. And so you don't just have faith in some cosmic feeling. We have faith in a person. That person is Jesus Christ. Loosen your grip on temporary. Don't hold too tight. And then number 3, learn to search the Scriptures. Search the Scriptures. You know where people go when they're in a catastrophe? Usually, they don't go to the Bible. They don't look for answers because they don't want them. When you're doubting the very foundation of things you believe, search the Scriptures. Limitations are real. Admit them. Limitations are real. Admit them. Admit them. And then what do you do? What do you say? Limitations are real. Admit them. Admit the fact that you don't have all the answers all the time. Admit the fact that you still are trying to get your head around things that happened to you 5 years ago. Admit the fact that you're still trying to figure out and navigate the path that you're on right now in your life. Admit, because there are limitations to our humanity. All of us have them. We can ignore them. We can come to church and put on a big smile and ignore the fact that deep down inside, we're crumbling on the inside. We're nothing but ashes on the inside. But boy, we're beautiful on the outside. But we've fallen apart on the inside. Listen, learn to be, and I don't mean airing your dirty laundry. Prayer request time is not a time for telling all your family secrets. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the privacy of your own home, learning to acknowledge that you have limitations and you're not Superman. And yeah, sometimes I do wonder about this. I don't have that all together yet. It's okay. What's the goal? Where are we trying to get to? Without faith, it is impossible to please God. So believe in spite of doubt. What are we supposed to do when doubt comes? Loosen your grip. Understand that limited sight has risk. There's risk to you faithing, trusting God. Learn to search the Scriptures. And then understand that limitations are real. Admit it. Admit your limitations. And then believe in spite of the doubt. That's what Thomas didn't do. He believed in the face of the truth. Jesus showed him. He said, but Thomas, wait a minute. Blessed are they that believe and haven't seen. Believe in spite of the doubt. Some of you here tonight, you have doubts about things that have happened in your life. You're still questioning them. You're rolling them over in your mind right now. Believe God in spite of your doubt. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Okay, fine. Did you get that off your chest? Believe that God has the supreme authority in your life. Believe Him and overcome the doubt. Dispelling doubt. You got to loosen the grip on things here. Many times the reason we're so greatly shaken is because we're too deeply rooted in this life. You won't be as greatly shaken if you're not as deeply rooted. May God have a light grip on things on this earth. May we trust Him. When doubt comes, and it's going to come. And don't get mad at your kids for asking you questions. Don't get mad. They're going to ask somebody. Just as well it might be you. It ought to be you. Don't get mad. You know God's not going to get mad at you for wondering, reflecting. Now accusing, that's another story. Questioning authority, that's another story. But God knows, you know He knows our doubts. Even if you say, I don't think it's right to express your doubts, Pastor. Well, let me ask you a question. Does God know them? Yeah, He does. Express them and believe Him through all of those. In spite of your doubt, believe God.